Sweetened condensed milk is a good ingredient for sweet recipes because of all the added sugar, about 25% by weight. But when sweetened condensed milk was invented in the 1800s, the original reason for adding sugar to the milk was not for flavor, but for protection against spoilage, and it works. Even after you open the can, sweetened condensed milk keeps longer than fresh milk. That added sugar kills bacteria that would otherwise digest the milk and spoil it. The sugar kills not by poisoning the bacteria, but by a more direct physical process. It draws water out of the bacteria, so the bacterial cells shrivel and die. Each bacterial cell has a sort of skin, technically a membrane. Water can pass through this membrane pretty easily, but substances dissolved in the water can't. Water has a natural tendency to move toward any region where there's a high concentration of dissolved substances. A bacterial cell in a can of sweetened condensed milk finds itself immersed in an extremely concentrated solution of sugar. Water inside the cell will, therefore, pass out through the cell membrane into the sugar solution. The bacterial cell dehydrates and dies in the sea of sugary water. Sugar added to fruit has the same effect. That's the idea behind fruit preserves. Other foods are preserved with salt, exploiting the same principle.
After World War II, European countries increased their efforts to live peacefully together on their small continent. To improve business and trade, 6 countries, Germany, France, Belgium, Italy, Luxembourg, and the Netherlands, came together in 1958 to create a common economy and currency. These countries agreed not to use trade barriers like tariffs, embargoes, or quotas with each other. This led to a more prosperous economy in these countries. As the years went on, more European countries joined this group called the European Union, or EU for short. There are currently 21 countries in the EU after the United Kingdom left. And there are other countries like Turkey that hope to join the EU. The EU worked to help create jobs in poor parts of Europe and pass laws to protect the environment. The group or union focused on the idea that all goods, services, people, and money should be able to move freely through the EU countries. Europeans no longer had to carry their passports when traveling between the EU countries. They could instead travel from country to country, much like the people in the United States travel from state to state. After World War II, European countries increased their efforts to live peacefully together on their small continent. To improve business
A sea breeze is an onshore breeze which develops around the coastlines of sea and even large lakes on warm days. In mid-latitudes, it commonly occurs during the spring and summer. This is when there is a large temperature difference between the sea and adjacent land areas. A sea breeze is a thermally driven circulation, forming due to the fact that the land heats up more quickly than the sea. Water has a higher specific heat capacity and so requires more energy to raise the temperature. As the sun radiates energy at more or less a constant rate, it will take longer for the water to heat up. This means that peak sea surface temperatures aren't reached until early autumn. This differential heating of adjacent land and sea surfaces is the main factor in the formation of sea breezes. A temperature difference of around 3 degrees Celsius is required for a sea breeze to start to develop. Other factors that are required for sea breezes to form are light offshore winds at around 3,000 feet. This aids the higher level flow out to sea to get the process started.
The word solstice means sun standing in Latin. It marks the point when the sun stops at its most northerly or southerly point relative to the equator before reversing direction. For the summer solstice, the sun would appear at its highest point in the sky, and is the day with the longest period of daylight. It happens twice a year, once in both the northern and southern hemispheres. The summer solstice in the northern hemisphere occurs around the 21st of June, but it does not always occur on this day, as it all depends on when the sun reaches its northernmost point from the celestial equator. It can happen between the 20th to the 22nd of June. Around this time, in areas north of the Arctic Circle, it is possible to witness the sun not set at all, so are dubbed Land of the Midnight Sun for this very reason. This occurs because the Earth's rotational axis is tilted. The Earth rotates around an axis inclined at an angle of 23.5 degrees in relation to its orbital plane around the Sun. It is this tilt that gives us our seasons. Summer occurs in the hemisphere that is tilted towards the Sun, whilst winter falls on the hemisphere that is tilted away from the Sun. The word solstice means sun standing in Latin. It marks the point when the sun stops at its most northerly or southerly point relative to the equator before reversing direction. For the summer solstice, the sun would appear at its highest point in the sky, and is the day with the longest period of daylight. It happens twice a year, once in both the northern and southern hemispheres.
Electricity is the physical flow of electrons, referred to as an electrical current.
All the added sugar,
electricity is an energy carrier that efficiently delivers the energy found in primary sources to end users, who in turn convert it into energy services.
Adding sugar to the milk was not
electricity
for
can be
flavor,
created in
but
three
for
main
protection
ways.
against spoilage. And
the most common is through electromagnetic conversion, where electricity is generated by moving an electric conductor like wires inside a magnetic field.
Sugar kills bacteria.
The most practical example of this is a generator connected to a turbine.
The sugar kills
the turbine
not
provides
by
the motion
poisoning
required to
bacteria,
move the conductor
but
in the
by a
generator.
more direct physical process.
This energy for
It
motion
draws
can come
water
from
out
various
of the bacteria,
technologies, for
so
example
the
wind
bacterial
turbines,
cells
hydro,
shrivel and
or the
die.
steam created from heat
Each
produced in
bacterial
nuclear
cell
fission or
has a
coal
sort of
combustion.
skin, technically
Electricity can
a
also be
membrane.
created through a chemical
Water
reaction.
Can pass through this
An example of
membrane
this
pretty
is a
easily,
battery or a
but
fuel cell.
substances dissolved in the water
Finally,
can't.
electricity can be created through
Water has a
solid-state
natural
conversion,
tendency to move
where
toward any
electricity is
region
generated
where
using the
there's a high
structure and properties
concentration
of a solid.
dissolved substances.
The specially
A
constructed
bacterial
solid
cell in a
consists
can
of
of
different
sweetened condensed
molecules
milk
packed closely
finds
together
itself
that create an
immersed
electric
in an
current when
extremely
stimulated.
concentrated solution of
An example
sugar.
of a technology that
Water
utilizes
inside the
solid-state
cell will,
conversion is a
therefore,
solar PV
pass
cell.
out through the cell membrane
It is important to
into
note
the
that
sugar
electricity is the
solution.
same regardless of
the
how it
bacterial
is
cell
produced.
dehydrates and
So the
dies
electricity
in the
generated
sea
from an
of sugary
electromagnetic
water.
generator is the same
Sugar
as that from a
added to
battery.
fruit has the same
Electricity
effect.
is the physical
That's the
flow of
idea
electrons,
behind fruit
referred
preserves.
to as an electrical
Other
current.
foods are preserved with salt.
Electricity is an
exploiting the
energy
same
carrier
principle.
that efficiently